So let me begin with an introduction. So I am Dave Jones. I'm the good looking guy on the left. You'll hear from Mike a little later. He's the other guy on the right. Um, I am based in Pittsburgh, 26 years in corporate America. During that tenure, I am the holder of 2 U.S. patents in merchandising. I spent 14 years after corporate America in the world of franchising as a multi unit franchise owner. I will be opening uh, 2 new units here in Pittsburgh, 2 new franchises. So I'm taking another bite at the apple, and I will be um, continuing to serve as your franchise advisor and helping you through the process. Um, so that's who I am, and I'd like to introduce Mike Ciccarelli. Mike?
Thank you, Dave. Good morning, everybody. We appreciate you all taking the time to join us. As you can see, I've been in the industry for 28 years in the franchising realm, both as a multi-unit franchisee and an area developer or master franchisee on the entrepreneurial side. And then I spent the better part of 2 decades in the corporate side of franchising, both with Burger King Corporation and Domino's Pizza. What I can tell you is that during my 2 decades, Burger King was bought out by 3G. And it was at that time when they laid off, 380 of my colleagues that I realized that, we're at parity when it comes to being in corporate America, especially these days with the pandemic and what a lot of people are dealing with, versus the risk of owning your own business. So today will be a very educational day on how to navigate that. My passion for both Dave and I now are to really help anybody that's interested in getting educated on entrepreneurship. So let's talk a little bit of what we're going to be covering today. Basically, we're going to talk a lot about why now is actually a great time to explore franchises. As I just mentioned, 2020 has been an interesting year for a lot of people. But you're going to learn today it's actually an ideal time to be investigating and getting educated on how to use these franchises as a career or diversification option. And we're going to talk a little bit about what life is going to look like after the pandemic. It's a little uncertain. Nobody has a crystal ball, but we're all confident that we're going to get our arms around this thing and life is going to continue. We also want to talk a little bit about what it takes to become a franchisee. What's the process of becoming an owner? You're also going to hear on and learn about what makes a good franchise organization. We've got a franchisor that'll be joining us today, so you get a little educated on a good pandemic and recession-resistant business model. And we're also going to talk about who performs well as a franchise owner. This is a real powerful part of what we're going to be talking today on. You're going to actually hear from two franchisees. It's good to hear from us. We've been in the trenches, been there and done it, but we want to let you hear from people that have recently became franchisees. We're also going to talk about what you need to know before buying a franchise. That includes the key legal and financial considerations. As many of us know, interest rates are at an all-time low. You're going to hear from Guidant Financial on how you could fund a business. You don't have to have millions of dollars in the bank to be able to get into business. And last but not least, as Dave mentioned, if you do have questions today, we're going to make sure that we get back to you. You do have an opportunity to schedule a one-on-one with Dave. That's really the key. Today's some good perspective, but you have an opportunity to talk about your business goals with us one-on-one. And I want to say, this is not a sales-driven process. What's good about today is you're going to get educated on the mutual evaluation process on investigating a franchise. And you being a good fit for the franchisee is as important as you making sure that franchisor is a good fit for you. So here's a little bit of what we do. At the Franchise Consulting Company, we are the largest franchise consulting company firm in the world. There's 150 consultants in our organization. And very humbly, Dave and I happen to be in the top 10 of the franchise consultants in our firm. And we do two primary things. First, we help companies or independent successful businesses become a franchise. We talk to them and educate them and help them turn their existing business into a franchise. The other part of what we do, which is really what our call's about today, is helping investors get educated on franchise opportunities that may be a good fit for them and what that process looks like. So our franchise partners rely on us on helping them identify an ideal candidate. We work with you in getting educated on the different opportunities, or maybe something you haven't even thought about that could be a good fit. So if it has to do with franchising, let us help you. We're a great resource. You can also see that we are the owners of the Great American Franchise Expo, one of the largest franchise expos in the country. We also publish the Franchise Journal, and with both Dave Jones and I have had articles published in that magazine, so you can feel free to check that out. And best of all, our services are free of charge. We're compensated like a realtor, and we'll get into all of that when we get on our one-on-ones. So let's take a look at the industry as a whole. Right now, franchising is a $787 billion industry. There's over 4,000 brands in franchising. They're not all created equal, and they're at all different types of investment levels. In spite of the pandemic this year, franchising is on pace to have a 10-year over year growth, and continuing to see locations get developed all over the country. And the other thing that we want to share with you is that a lot of people have a perception that franchising is primarily in the fast food or the restaurant category. In all actuality, franchising permeates just about every industry out there. And we're going to talk about some of those today, especially the ones that are doing well even now. And last but not least, franchising employs close to 9 million workers. So here's the biggest benefit of franchising. What I appreciate about it, having been both on the corporate and the entrepreneurial side, you're really betting on yourself. I always work with clients and investors, and the whole purpose of looking at franchising is you're compressing time and you're compressing capital. A good franchise company is going to have a proven business model. They're going to have systems and processes in place that you get to evaluate so you can make an informed business decision. And quite frankly, as I said just a minute ago, you're banking on yourself. You have the opportunity to get the cookbook, if you will, with the recipes on what you need to do to become successful with that specific brand. A lot of people can look at franchising as either a owner-operator type of scenario, and we also help empire builders, people that are looking to scale a big business. We work with people that want to keep their jobs, that are looking at this as a diversification strategy. So think of franchising as a vehicle that gets you from point A to point B. That's really what this is all about, which is where your goals come in. The good thing about franchising is that basically 90% of franchisees enjoy operating their business. There's something to be said. I can certainly speak to that, having been on both sides of the fence, corporate and self-employed now as I am, that there are some true benefits that you could take advantage of with business ownership, especially when it comes to tax liability. And secondly, as you can see through the Franchise Business Review, the better portion of franchisees are happy with their decision. You'll get to hear from a couple of franchisees today. So let's talk about what our process looks like. In a nutshell, the process with franchising is very open. It's a transparent due diligence process, which is why I really gravitate. I've been an independent business owner and I gravitated toward franchising, and there's some benefits to it when it comes to the due diligence piece. So here is how it works. We're going to talk a little bit about our one-on-one consultation that you could schedule with Dave or myself. And in a nutshell, we really want to learn about you. You know, what are your goals? What are you looking to accomplish? And let's see if franchising is a viable option for you to consider. So again, it's an educational process. The second thing is a good franchise consultant is going to understand your goals, your skill sets and experiences. And then we help and present you with opportunities that we feel or could be a potential good fit. And that's where the value comes in. You know, as we said, there's 4,000 franchises, and we have a lot of investors that come to us to, you know, stating they don't even know where to start. We can help you with that. Thirdly, we want to help you navigate the due diligence process. As you heard from Dave, he's getting ready to take, quote, another bite of the apple. He's going to be opening up a couple franchises on his own. We've both been there and done it, and we can help you navigate that process and be a good resource for you. Last but not least, franchisors are looking to develop a relationship. They're not looking to sell you a car. It's got to be a good fit for both parties. They're going to provide you with certain disclosure documents we'll talk about. You're going to have an opportunity to learn about their training and support. You have an opportunity to talk with other franchisees. And lastly, in some cases, you have an opportunity to meet the executive team and the support team of these franchisors. So again, very open, transparent due diligence process so you can make an informed business decision. I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and he's going to take you through a little bit of the goals of franchise ownership. Dave?
Thanks, Mike. So everybody, we're going on time, and a couple questions have come up on the chat room. So just a reminder, if you have a question, please go to the chat room and get it in there. We will answer if time permits. So we want to talk now about what are some goals that you might have, and everybody on this call, I am certain, has different goals. Let's see. Let's get everybody muted. If you are on this call, there we go. I think I got it. Okay. If I mute you, please don't understand. I'm not being rude. I am simply trying to keep it quiet for everybody. So, some goals that you might have that franchise ownership might be able to address. The ability to generate free cash flow with strong upside. Strong upside means you can scale that business either via multiple units or by scaling the business itself by adding people, equipment, or resources. And you can do so with reasonable risk tolerance. That is the reason that franchising helps mitigate some of your concerns as an entrepreneur, because you have a playbook, you have a proven model, and you have a system and a process that now it's still up to you to execute. Mike and I talk a lot, and we talk about, 70% the franchise will provide you on your road to success. The 30% or so is going to be up to you and how well you execute. I mentioned about a scalable business, and we'll talk about the types of businesses a little later on. But whether that business is owning and operating many units or a single unit, or owning and operating one business that can be grown by adding more resources. Resources, as I mentioned, can come in a form of people, equipment, or capital. And then finally, as Mike alluded to, this is all about the proper fit. We would like to do a good job of getting to know you, your goals, your interests, your likes, your dislikes, a financial picture, what is reasonable and what isn't, and then some of your goals. And it's our job then to marry those with your interests and concerns and give you some examples that might resonate with you and check the boxes that we've identified together. These can be met by verifying and going to a franchisor. A franchisor needs to have the excellent service or product that you are wanting and needing that offers recession resistance, Amazon resistance, and now, yes, this thing called pandemic resistance. And it can be easily, that cannot be, excuse me, easily replicated or disrupted. Just checking to make sure we have one person waiting. I just admitted. I'm sorry. I'm bouncing back and forth at the control panel. And then finally, the transparent nature about franchising is what I like and Mike likes, having been on all sides of that, because you can validate and do your due diligence quite well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay. Oops. How did that happen? Wow. Sorry, guys. Don't know how that. There we go. Okay. There is a legal document for every franchise that we represent, and there are other franchises that we don't represent, but we do our due diligence and we vet them in our inventory prior to presenting them to you. One of the documents will provide the most visibility into that franchise is called a franchise disclosure document. We are a heavily regulated industry, and there's a lot of disclosure that benefits you by being able to read and to learn. For example, again, in every FDD, there are 23 items or categories, and I'd like to highlight a few of the really critical ones. Item 3 is litigation. Are there any lawsuits filed against that franchise? We all know people can file lawsuits for any reason or for no reason. So we have to understand just because a lawsuit may have been filed doesn't mean it's valid, but it is a yellow flag and it would cause you to do some further investigation. Other fees and initial fees, item 5 and item 6. This will show you your investment range, but also show you your ongoing expenses. So royalties, marketing fees, maybe there's a technology fee. That has to be fully disclosed, and you will have the opportunity to see that within the FDD. Item 7 is the initial estimated investment. Um, that can range and most often is shown as a range. A good reason for that is real estate in Southern California or greater New York City probably is going to be different cost wise, and if you have a real estate business, than say Duluth, Minnesota. So they'll show the low end and a high end. They'll have a range, and oftentimes they will show you the average as well. Item 19 is a very critical item in an FDD. That is where the financial performance of the franchisors and are represented. That can be represented a number of ways. Sometimes it's represented by years in business. Sometimes it's represented by upper quartiles, upper third, and it's represented a number of ways. But that's your visibility into how franchise owners are doing within that network. To take that financial representation and now to do some of your further due diligence, you can go to item 20. Item 20, let me just make sure I got everybody in here. Hang on. I'm getting notes that people need to be admitted. Apologies. All right, I don't see anybody waiting to be admitted. So item 20 is a list of every franchise location within the network and including if there are corporate locations. So when a franchise begins, they need to prove their model or validate their concept. So oftentimes it is showing both corporate stores and then franchise location. Item 21, another item I like to point out to is a reference to and point out is financial statements. What is the financial stability of that franchise organization? You want to go into business with a well-capitalized and a well-financed enterprise. Speaking of financing, we mentioned in the early agenda, we were going to have a participation of from Guidon Financial. Guidon is the industry's largest and best financial partner to help you come up with a capital strategy and a way to finance your business that is most beneficial to you. I am looking for Lexi. All right, I'm gonna unmute you. Lexi, are you on?
Yep, looks like I'm unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, Ken. Excellent. The floor is yours, Lexi. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Um, Appreciate you guys being here. I'm Lexi Ingraffia. I'm the senior funding consultant at Guidant Financial, and I promise I'll keep this brief. I know a lot of people can snooze over, but there are a lot of questions surrounding funding these days, aren't there? And just to give you a little background on Guidant, we were funded in 2003, and I think, Dave, you can go to the next slide.
All right. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
All right.
Yeah, there we go. So we were founded in 2003. As of today, we've got about 150 employees between two offices, which are actually going fully remote after every.
Sorry, Lexi, hang on one second. Somebody was speaking. All right. All right, Lexi, can you go? There you go.
There we go.
Sorry.
Okay,
Just
no
muting.
worries.
Sorry.
So yeah, we've gone fully remote within the last couple of weeks, which has been nice. And we are still privately held, which has definitely impacted us as far as keeping everything in-house. And to date, you can go to the next slide, Dave. We've helped fund 18,000 businesses by securing about 5 or 6 billion in funding, and obviously that's going to create a few jobs, 90,000 roughly. But what's most important is that we can help you guys, not with just a startup, but if you're looking to purchase an existing business, or even if you need some working capital later down the road, we have multiple ways of doing that for you. And you see a few little bubbles down there with regard to SBA loans, just different lines of credit, what we have called the 401k rollover, which is really what I really want to hit on today, only because it is the most unfamiliar to most, but I would say that most of you have access to your retirement funds, actually. So Dave, you could click the next one. Oh, I think you skipped a few.
Sorry.
There we go.
There we go.
So what is the 401k rollover? You'll also hear it referred to as ROBS. I know it is a terrible acronym, but that is the IRS for you, but it stands for Rollover for Business Startups, where you can actually take a portion or even all of your retirement funds and invest them into your business tax and penalty free. So essentially, we create a C Corp for you, and this is everything that Guidant does in-house. Then we'll create a new 401k plan that sponsors your business that you'll actually be able to contribute to. And then we roll your funds from your existing retirement plan into this new 401k. And then from the 401k, you're going to move that into your corporation by purchasing shares of stock. So now your 401k becomes a shareholder of your company, and you're able to use those funds for whatever you need, as long as it's business related, right? So if it's paying franchise fees, hiring employees, any sort of build out, you're good to go. You could even combine that with an SBA loan. You click to the next one, Dave. So what I mean by that is using it as your equity injection. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the loan process by now, whether it's an SBA loan, a home mortgage, car note, whatever, but you have to have some sort of down payment. With ROBS, you can actually roll over however much you need as that down payment without having to deplete your cash reserves, which most of my clients end up doing. So you can either take a portion of your rollover and you can actually leave the remainder as post-closing liquidity or cash reserves in your business. So again, you're not having to touch your own cash sitting in your checking and savings. Now, to touch on SBA a little bit, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions surrounding that right now. Dave, you can click on the next one. Just want to give you guys an idea of what we're seeing in the industry today as far as what lenders are requiring. And they call it the 5 C's of SBA financing. The first one is your capital injection, or essentially your down payment. This can be anywhere between 20 and 30% down. If the investment level that you're looking at is above 150, you might as well just take a conservative approach and assume 30% down. So if you're looking at a $300,000 project all in, you're going to need at least $90,000 to put down on that deal, right? Which would bring your loan to 210. Now, if the concept is $150,000 or less, a lot of times you only need 10% down, which is nice. So that would be at the highest end, $15,000, which would bring your loan to 135, and that's how much you'd finance with the bank. The second C is your credit score. Typically, they want to see 680, 690 or higher, no derogatory marks, late payments, no medical collections, anything like that. The third is your capacity. This is the wherewithal for you to take on an additional loan payment, make sure that you're not stretching yourself too thin. So, generally, they do want to see a secondary source of outside income. So, if either you or a spouse could keep your job, that would be great. If not, we do have some lenders who are willing to work with those who don't have that outside income right now, but then you may want to just prepare to have some additional cash reserves on hand. The fourth is what they call character. Just means that the lenders want to see obviously a clean background, but more importantly, they want to see that resume and show that you have relative experience to the business. It doesn't have to be direct industry experience, but you want to make sure that whatever's on your resume reflects how you're going to be able to run that business successfully. And then the last piece is collateral. Every bank is going to require collateral on the deal as far as the business assets that you're looking to purchase. Now, when it comes to personal collateral, usually if the loan itself is over $150,000, they do want personal collateral on the deal, which is typically in the form of your primary residence. If not, they will take cash or stocks in the form of a CD typically, and they will hold it for the life of the loan. Now, obviously, this is unique to each situation, but I want to let you guys know that we're able to help you and figure out what works best for you and your family. Now, as far as the process, what you can expect from Guidant, what you see on the screen is kind of what we do throughout the entirety of the loan. So initially, we'll help you pre-flight the deal. So we've got proprietary calculators that will submit all of your numbers through. We'll be able to review that with a few lenders. And if we have someone that comes back with a decent review, we'll let you know. And if you decide you want to move forward, we'll go ahead and move you forward at that point, and we'll help you with the packaging, which is obviously your business plan, your financial models, resumes, so on and so forth. Once we get all of the bank forms together, we'll go into full-on lender selection. So you'll have access to all of the lenders that we work with to see who's going to be able to offer you the best deal. From there, hopefully we get you a few different letters of intent and you'll choose the bank that you want to work with, go into final loan approval, and of course, funding. Usually that takes, for, I would say, a startup that's service-based, meaning no brick and mortar, usually 80 to 90 days to get you fully funded. And then for anything that's going to require brick and mortar, it's going to take a couple of months because obviously they're taking into account that you have to find your space and, of course, do any sort of build out. So once you're approved, they don't automatically transfer those funds to your business banking account. They will actually do a withdrawal schedule with you. So maybe every couple of weeks, you'll be able to take out X amount based on how much you need at that point. And then just lastly, wrapping this thing up for you guys, this is a very impactful slide. I just want you to be able to see that obviously we offer multiple ways to fund your business. We talked briefly about the 401k rollovers, the SBA loans. There is unsecured financing if you just need maybe a smaller amount, portfolio loans or lines of credit against nice brokerage accounts. And then lastly is equipment lease. So if you don't need a full out SBA loan and just need to finance some equipment, we can help there too. But if you have any other questions, be sure to let Dave and Mike know. And I appreciate you guys having me.
Lexi, that is absolutely outstanding. I'm sorry, getting some feedback here. I appreciate your review. I know we didn't give you a whole lot of time, but let me just follow up a little bit what Lexi's already covered. If you want to have, I call it a capital strategy call, Guidant Financial is excellent. They offer all kinds of ways for you to fund your project, as she's just talked about, and many more that didn't get covered. So thank you so much, Lexi. That was outstanding. Okay, so I'm going to talk here a little bit about the types of franchises that are available. And I'm going to go over what we call the matrix. Those of you that are And this is not with the uh, dark sunglasses and the movie. The Matrix talks about the types of businesses, 4,000 of them out there, and we try to get some general categorization because it helps you to make sense of that number. So there are four quadrants we're going to talk about. Quadrant A, which is simple retail. Quadrant B, sophisticated retail. Quadrant C, business to consumer. And quadrant D. So some examples that might help you to better understand examples of that would be simple retail. I threw some notes up there, Dunkin' Donuts and Great Clips, very recognizable brands. The reason they are called simple retail, obviously they're retail, so they require a brick and mortar space. And they are simple because the level of staff member or members that you need to employ are fairly entry level employees. When you go to sophisticated retail, again, retail space, brick and mortar, in both simple and sophisticated retail, location and a type of location may vary. In the case of a Meineke Car Center, certainly different than a Dunkin' Donuts. And one of the examples we're going to talk about sophisticated retail is going to be up here very shortly to talk about PeWellClinic. So I won't go over that one. So those simple and sophisticated retails are the brick and mortar businesses. In the quadrants C and D, which are your service businesses, B to C service business might be Always Best Senior Care. There are many, many senior care services. These are run oftentimes out of your home office, and you will scale your business by adding staff. Or Floor Covering International, which is a franchise that has in-home services providing all types of flooring, and they do it through a mobile showroom, a van that has over 400 different samples contained in a van. So it's a very customer-driven in-home presentation. B2B businesses would be examples would be Office Mart Business Solutions or Jan Pro Commercial Cleaning Services. As you might guess, some of the residential and commercial cleaning businesses under the pandemic are doing quite well. So that will help you to get a feel for all 4,000 franchises that are out there. They don't neatly fit into one of these categories, but they're largely categorized by these traits. So I want to introduce now one such example of a sophisticated retail called PeWellClinic. And joining us this morning is Rob Huntington. And Rob, I'm going to unmute you so you can share your wisdom.
Excellent. Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Excellent. Dave, Mike, thank you for having me on here. So I'm going to chat with you all about PeWellClinic. Before I get into PeWellClinic, let me give you a quick background on myself so you know how I'm related to PeWellClinic. I was a high school history teacher. I have been a franchisor, franchisee. I owned a tutoring franchise, managed franchise operations and a consumer call center and franchise sales for a 300-unit franchise brand. Have been a franchise consultant like Mike and Dave, and am now an equity investor in PeWellClinic as well as some other franchisors. And PeWellClinic, I think, is the most attractive business I've ever seen. So on the next slide here, you have the quick high-level overview information. Kind of going to go rogue here, and I don't know if I'm going to hit every slide in order necessarily, but the main idea of PeWellClinic is it's like I live in New York City. We have CityMD in New York City, so walk-in convenient healthcare for human beings. It hasn't been done for pets. PeWellClinic is that for pets. A lot of people talk a big game in franchising about businesses being semi-passive owner operations, so like semi-absentee. PeWellClinic actually delivers on that in a really profound way, which is a big part of what attracted me to the business. The other big part was the absurd industry growth. Pets have grown straight through the 2000-2001 recession, 2008-2009, and are growing increasingly through COVID. PeWellClinic actually before we made our investment was significantly up year over year pre-COVID, and then COVID was like pouring gas on the fire. So the business is like the market as a whole is just phenomenal. The semi-absentee part though, so that piece is you're running this through a veterinarian. And veterinarians are serious professionals. They have medical degrees. They care about their business, and their license is on the line. So versus like a business where, like in a tutoring center, for example, when I hired someone to run a tutoring center, sometimes I got lucky and made a good choice, but a lot of the times I didn't. And you have someone who maybe doesn't care about the business as much as they could running it. Here you've got someone whose license is on the line, and the only managerial lift they've got is managing 2 people, which is relatively easy to do. And the 2 folks that they manage are people who care about pets and are well paid. So a big thing that you can run into in franchising, a challenge that you'll see when you talk to people who own, 10, 20, 30 franchises of different sorts, is the challenge of labor. With PeWellClinic, you're paying all of your employees really well, which means that they show up on time, are professional, which it prevents a huge headache. The other piece, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that I like here, but the footprint bullet point, so 800 to 1,200 square feet is phenomenal. These things can be built for $150,000. Right now, my partners and I are opening a few locations in New Jersey. We have one lease signed for 1,200 square feet and another LOI out for about 1,000 square feet, which is phenomenal, especially given the unit economics. I don't think we have a slide on those here, but you'll see if PetWell's a franchise that you get excited about. The unit economics are they're really off the charts. When I first went to visit it and meet with Dr. Sam, who's the CEO and founder of the business, a thing that blew me away was you have this unassuming PeWellClinic that's in a strip mall right next to a Subway and a Jet's Pizza and a mattress store in like a nice neighborhood in Knoxville, but not like an outrageously nice neighborhood. Then you dig into the economics of it, and the dollars per square foot of revenue are similar to what you'd find in like high-end retail in Chicago or Manhattan or LA, out of this tiny, unassuming little footprint. The next piece there that we have is the proprietary technology. So Dr. Sam, the CEO and founder, is a rock star. He not only is a veterinarian, he has his undergraduate degree is in physics, so he's the super smart guy. And he's also a computer programmer, and he built all of the technology for PeWellClinic from the ground up. A lot of times you'll see operating systems in franchises that are kind of cobbled together with duct tape and bubble gum. The technology we have at PetWell is more in line with something you'd see at like a 1,000-unit franchise brand. In fact, we actually sell it separately under a different logo to other vet clinics throughout the country. So it's like a real proper commercially developed operating system, which you get exclusive access to the features for PetWell. And more features than anyone else gets. And then that last bullet point, designated essential. So it was an essential service through COVID, so we've stayed open. I think I hit on most of this stuff. It's walk-in only. The pricing's really simple, so I didn't hit on this earlier. The central thesis of PetWell is to be affordable, convenient, great care. Kind of like Dell computers back in the day. Like you still get a great product. The thing we've cut out is there's no phones. So you check in online, which means that you're able to maximize throughput. So a thing in vet care is surgery. So we do no surgery. And surgery is kind of the bright, shiny object in pet care. It's the reason that private equity has jumped into pet care in a really huge way is you look at surgery and you look at the sticker size of how much a surgery costs and what your margins are, and you're blown away. One of Dr. Sam's key insights was, while surgery is really sexy, by not doing surgery, you're able to make more money because you just focus on the 85% of the rest of the business, which is non-surgical, and you're thereby able to maximize throughput, which ultimately means a strong bottom line for you as a franchise owner, without all of the complexity of surgery, which really also appeals to vets who like being able to come in and work a day and not have to take their work home and worry about an animal that died on the table or like a complicated case they have the next day. It's a simple job where they come in, provide great care, and don't have to take their work home with them. Next slide, please. There's some snapshots of the clinics. They're beautiful. I got nothing more on the clinics. This one is, I think if you're going to take one thing away from this, other than like the unit economics of PetWell are phenomenal, is when you're buying a franchise, it really is nice to have the rising tide that lifts all boats. And pet care has just grown year over year over year, and it's showing no signs of slowing down. In fact, it's showing signs of accelerating. So basically, this means like we have to really bungle the business to not make it succeed or to fail. And I think, in fact, we're going to execute it near flawlessly. However, we have a lot of give given the growth in the industry. Here's your folks. So you're the owner, you take care of the business, you've got your vet, and then you have 2 vet assistants. And then training is top notch. Dr. Sam has put the same thought and care into the training and support as into the rest of the business. And then the guy who is head franchise operations officer is also a rock star. He almost played in the NFL and then has been a trainer, has done marketing for significant brands, opening up stores, and also worked on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and is a great guy. So your training and support is top notch. And this is the software. I talked to this a bit earlier. The software blew me away. Software is never really a reason like to invest in the business. Although once you get into it, to have it buttoned up is really nice. And this blew away a lot of the people who invested with us in it. We have a whole bunch of serious investors behind us, like the former CEO of Walmart.com, a bunch of hedge fund managers. So the financial backing behind PeWell, which is an important thing that I didn't talk to earlier. You want a franchisor who's financially strong. PeWell is as strong as it comes. So like the balance sheet is solid, and then the people behind the balance sheet are super solid as well.
Hey, Rob, if I could make one comment, I, like Rob, an equity investor in this, and I will be opening 2 PeWellClinics here in Pittsburgh. But what I really like about it, from the time you are at home and you log on and you want to make an appointment online, you're not scheduling that, you want to go in today, you'll go online and register, and it'll give you a number. They'll hold your place for 2 hours. So let's say you're 10 minutes from the clinic and you're number 10 in line. So you take your time, you get there, and you get there and you text them and let them know you're there. And now you're number 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever it happens to be. You get seen, you get things taken care of, you get paid. From the time you registered online until you're out the door and paid is averaging 43 minutes. Awfully impressive. Those of us that are pet owners, if you have an allergy or a skin problem or an ear infection, you're probably looking at 2 days on average or more to get in and be seen. So that's really powerful. Okay, Rob, thank you so much for covering that. There'll be questions of follow-up, I'm sure. And is there anything else, Rob, before I turn it over to our franchise owners?
No, thank you for the time. And Premier Martial Arts and Real Property Management are great brands too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, guys.
All yours, Mike. Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Dave. Well, everybody, we appreciate you sticking with us. We're on the last few minutes of our seminar today. So that was a good example of hearing from a franchisor, and going back to the quadrants that Dave spoke about earlier. I really want to put an exclamation point on all the different opportunities in those different quadrants that are relevant today. And it's always good to hear from the franchisees, the folks that have taken a leap of faith, done their due diligence, done their research, and made a decision to be able to go into business for themselves. I'd like to kick off by introducing a franchisee with Premier Martial Arts, Rob Hall. Just really quickly on Rob, he's been a seasoned corporate professional. He's had a plethora of experience in all different type of industries, everything from high tech to construction, working with our military. Thank you for that, Rob. Matter of fact, speaking of pets, veterinary medicine, and he's also been in both private and national security. Much of his experience came from global companies, so he's well-traveled and understands international business. He holds an MBA from Colorado State University, and he's made the decision to open up a premier martial arts franchise. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Rob. Rob, you could simply read those questions. I know we went a little bit into your bio, and take it from there. Thanks, Rob. It's all yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I went into becoming a franchisee simply for my own happiness. Like I said, and like he introduced me in my bio, I've been through global companies. I've been through local companies, through my vet care positions. I've been in local nighttime facilities and daytime corporate jobs where I was climbing the corporate ladder. And all of it, I finally just came down to myself of becoming a franchisee for my own happiness. I'm like, why do I continue to work to make everybody else happy? Why don't I put something out there that's gonna me working on my own happiness? What was I doing before becoming a franchisee? Was everything business. You heard him say I have an MBA. That's how I was able to move around multiple different industries, because everything I did was about business. It was HR, it was accounting, it was IT, it was security, it was manufacturing. You name it, I've been in the business. And so coming in to be a franchisee, personally, I'm a certified running coach. So I wanted to find a business that I could continue coaching. I really enjoyed the aspect of corporate training. I enjoy the aspect of coaching people. So being able to get down and coach kids, coach adults, all of that is what appealed to me when I was, trying to get into what do I want to do with going into a franchise aspect. The second question, happy with the franchisor training? Absolutely. Talking with Dave Jones as my franchise consultant, he was always there. And anytime I had a question, anytime I was getting the jitters, oh my God, what am I doing? Is this going the right way? What's available? All of that. He was always just in time. He had it all right there lined up for me. And then what do I appreciate most about working with a franchise consultant? Exactly what they say there on the slide, options. I was completely, and I will tell everybody here that I went with another franchise company as well. So I had two different consultants I was working for, but why did I do that? One was options, but two, I was 100% open and honest with all of them to say, look, I'm working with other consultants in other companies. Ultimately, Dave was the one that presented the brand that I chose and went into and wanted, but Dave was my number one consultant to start. The others were just exactly that, options. What else is out there? I was doing my homework, doing my research. But the consultants really help doing all of that into everything. I see one question popping in. What did cash flow look like from the time you signed the agreement to achieve your return on investment? Answer to that, I have not hit my return on investment yet. I just opened my doors last week. So I signed my agreement in February, and I'm still in my, what would you call it? My initial investment, I'm still working on. COVID did have an impact on that, but the martial arts industry is an industry that's not going anywhere. It's been around for 100 years. It's going to be around for another 100 years. That was one of the options that I looked at when I was doing my research, was what's not a niche? What's going to survive if something happens? One of the options, there was an option out there that was very specific to the school system. I won't tell you the brand. I don't want to bad talk them. But they were very specific to school brands. Well, guess what? Now schools are not in session, and I, as Premier, am profiting from that because I'm able to pull kids out of school for PE programs because they don't have that anymore. So it was very much fluid throughout COVID. Now, I was impacted. I'm 4 months behind on my opening simply because of building a brick and mortar studio, and it took a while for permits. So my impact financially was payroll and lack of revenue for that 4 months of payroll. So I did have to dig in a little deeper to my reserves to pop that up. But to answer the question, my return on investment, I'm still working to realize. I looked at 8 different franchises, addressing the next question. I looked at 8 different franchise, and as Dave would tell you, I was already in the midst of searching for either that or another full-time employment. So I actually moved through my 8 pretty quick. From the time we identified Premier, I was at their discovery day probably within 30 days, I believe. We started working on all of this right around the 2nd or 3rd week of December, and I signed my franchise agreement at the end of February. So I made it through 8 different franchise research, discovery calls, going through that. That was my 8-hour day while I was looking for things. But again, that's my personal take, is I spent and put in the time and investment all day, every day to pick those 8 and make it an expeditious process.
Fantastic, Rob. Thank you very much for that. That's some good perspective. And real quickly, before I introduce John Cooper, that's the big, you said 2 big important points there. First of all, on the question about the cash flow, that's a great question. And that's the beauty of investigating these franchises. You actually get to reach out to franchisees who have been open and understand what that looks like. You also have, as Dave mentioned earlier, the item 19 that is where a franchisor can legally make earnings claims. So if you don't know, it's against the law for us to make earnings claims. You're able to peel the layers of the onion back, as they say, and do your due diligence to make an informed business decision. Okay, so that's a great question. And of course, when we talk one-on-one, we'll go into that. We'll talk about that and help you navigate that through the process. So Rob, I appreciate you sharing how valuable a consultant can be. I mean, let's face it, it's a free resource. If you're going to buy a house, you're going to use a real estate agent. If you're going to make an investment into a franchise, we're here to help. I want to next turn it over to another great candidate that we had the pleasure of working with, John Cooper. We got a couple of MBA guys with us today. So John has an MBA from New York University Business School. He spent over 20 years in varied and progressive financial analysis. So John, I'm sure you get an A+ on your due diligence if you're a financial analyst guy. So that speaks volumes about your investigation. He served with MedImmune, Time Warner, and Nextel. And not only did he spend time in the corporate world, we got a little in common here, John. He's also very entrepreneurial. He was an independent owner-operator of a chain of espresso bars and cafes that were located in medical buildings, and was very successful, growing his sales tenfold over a 6-year period. So without speaking for you, John, he, like myself, as an independent entrepreneur, decided to pursue the franchising walk to compress time and capital. So let me turn it over to John. He comes from, the quadrant C section, right? So you heard some brick and mortar examples. John's going to talk a little bit about a service business, real property management. Thanks, John. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, just hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Perfect.
Great. Similar to Rob, I left the corporate world for my happiness. I was just tired of the corporate world. I wanted to challenge myself and move forward. And in 2009, my wife and I started an espresso bar located in medical buildings. And after 11 years, we grew the business to close to $1 million in revenue and added multiple locations throughout the DC area. When COVID hit, my wife and I decided to just cash out. The business was slowing down, and COVID, it really adversely affected the business. We thought it was best just to close it out, cash out, and move to a lower cost of living. So we began to look at small businesses for sale. And during this process, I quickly learned that many of the companies were overpriced, and oftentimes the financials of these businesses were much worse than what was communicated to me. Sometimes the companies for sale were poorly run and needed to be turned around. So after several months of frustration, I received a call from Dave Jones, a franchise consultant. Dave explained the advantages of franchises. He was honest in his assessment that there are good franchises and there are bad franchises. Dave wanted to understand my goals for the franchise ownership and find the right fit for me. At first, I was pretty resistant to franchise ownership. I wanted to run my own business without the constraints of the franchise. But over time, I learned my assessment of the franchise business was wrong. Many franchises have proven business models and use best practices. In order to scale your business, it is critical to implement best practices. And I learned that through owning those espresso bars. I kind of capped out at $1 million. But if I had best practices, if I had the franchise to scale my business, I could have gotten it a lot bigger than just 1 million in revenue. And Dave was instrumental in opening up my mind to franchises that I originally did not consider. Through long conversations with Dave, he convinced me to open my mind, and his knowledge and experience as a successful entrepreneur really helped me. I couldn't have done it without him. And the franchise, I haven't opened my franchise yet. We're going to be opening in December. But what I can say is that the franchise itself, Real Property Management, has done quite well. They compete directly with mom and pops. And mom and pops usually, they're not web-based. They collect the checks. And with COVID, they do their processing through paper and through direct contact. Real Property Management is web-based, so they can collect checks through a web portal and deliver communication through a web portal. And they've actually grown their business during this period. So I'm excited to start my business and move forward in my career. And I'd like to thank Dave for doing a great job for me. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Hey, Mike, before I got to tell John's story, John called me one day, and we'd really worked together for a while, and said, Dave, I'm done. I'm not going forward. And I've decided that, thank you, but we're done. And I really stewed on it all night. It caught me off guard. And I finally called him back the next day, and we talked through it. And he had pretty much been convinced that there was another property management franchise that he thought was better. And I said, before you make that decision, let's just compare. And he called me back the next day after spending a little time with Real Property Management and said, wow, thanks. So John, thank you so much for your open-mindedness. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Mike, I'll turn it back over to you.
No, great stuff. Great stuff. John, was there anything else you wanted to add, or that was fantastic perspective, man?
No, not at all. I just like to, say that it was a great experience, and it was a very positive experience. And thanks, Dave.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, folks, we're down to the final step here. So whoops, there we go. Can everybody hear me? I got muted.
Yeah, there's control. Sorry, my apologies.
No worries. No worries. We got to love technology. So anyway, I wanted to just simply say, you heard from a couple of franchisees. Here is the point. Why did we think John and Rob would be good to have on today? We started out this lunch and learn by stating, is now a good time to open a business? Okay. The fact of the matter is that franchising continues to grow. There's a lot of thriving industries. It's a process that takes time. And based on where we're at, getting ready to go into 2021, it's a good time to be thinking about your future and what could make sense for you. You've got examples of people with different backgrounds. You've heard about business models that if you want to keep your job and you're looking to diversify, fine. If you want to be an owner operator, it's fine. All of these franchises provide paths for you to take. And that's where we can help you, as you heard today, when it comes to understanding your business goals and determining if franchising can be a fit or not. So let's talk about and wrap up today. If you want to go to that last slide, Dave.
Yep. Oops, sorry, wrong way.
So here's what's next for those of you that are with us today. Now that we've given you some good perspective on lending, the different type of options, how this process works when it comes to the transparency, it's really time for us to get a one-on-one scheduled with you. So here's what's going to happen. I'll be sending out an email that will enable you to schedule a one-on-one. It'll include a link with the confidential questionnaire. And we want to be upfront with everybody, especially if you've looked at a business before. There are some financial questions on there. We're not interested in anybody's social security number or your bank account information. We're not trying to be nosy. At the end of the day, it lets us know what you have to work with and if franchising could be a true viable option. And of course, when you speak to a qualified funding consultant like Lexi from Guidant Financial, you're going to want to understand that because that's going to be a big part of your decision. So we'll send out that link. It'll take about 15 minutes to fill out. This is nothing tedious. So you've taken the first step to join us today. This is real important for us to be able to review your information so we have a productive conversation. So if you don't get our email, check your spam folder, check your junk folder. Sometimes we get routed into the proverbial junk mail, but it'll have that link. And once we get your CQ, we'll reach out to you to schedule our one-on-one. We'll need about 30 minutes or so. We've blocked off some time for next week. So we look forward to just continuing the conversation and getting a little deeper on what you're looking to do and understanding your background. Dave, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would. And so thank you again, Mike. Thank you for everybody who participated, both as a interested party and also as a presenter. One thing I will throw out there for anyone who would like to proceed and follow these simple 2 steps. That's the first steps. Actually, today was the first step of your journey. The next steps are when you begin to gather information specific for you. I would like to offer to everybody, if you've got a piece of paper, write this down. There's a wonderful resource called the Franchise MBA. Mike and I subscribe to it. We've read it. It talks about the process. If you don't have a process, to what Rob and John Cooper both said, how do you ever eliminate 4,000 options to find the one that's right for you? Well, this Franchise MBA will help guide you through that process. And that's the same process you'll be following with Mike or with me. I will send you, or Mike will send you, a free book at our expense once we receive your CQ. So when you're at home, Google the Franchise MBA, look at it on Amazon and read the reviews. It gets 4.75 out of 5 stars. It's an excellent resource and it will help you as you begin your steps of determining if this is right for you. Okay. Mike?
Yeah, great point. Well, we don't want to keep you. We hope this was productive. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll be sending out the emails to everybody and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks again for everybody joining us today and our presenters. Have a great rest of the week.